Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Zero. Per your request, we have decided that we were going to watch the 2002 police drama Infernal Affairs, directed by Andrew Lau and Alan Mack. This is a Hong Kong film starring Andy Lau and Tony Leung, which I was very surprised to see. You recommended this movie. I know you saw it way back when, and I owned this film for a while and just never got around to watching it. So I was happy to finally check this film out. So why don't you go ahead and talk about your feelings of the film? Maybe go into how you saw it first, and then tell us what you think of the movie.
Okay, so for background, I saw this back in 2003
Mm-hmm.
when I was just dating my then girlfriend, who was Hong Kong Chinese and everything,
Right.
and it had came out. It had came out to VCD. So if anyone wants
Oh my
to
God.
find out how old I am, there you go.
Wow.
So
VCD?
so she had gotten it on VCD, got the entire, and then as the years went on while we were dating, she got the rest of the series immediately when they came out to VCD and everything. So I throughout the time that I was dating her, I got to see the entire trilogy.
Ooh.
But yeah, uh, it was one of those things that when we were just kind of hanging out at her home and stuff, she was just like, hey, you mind if we watch a movie together? I was like, okay, well, yeah, just I I'm pretty open to most movies and everything. She was like, okay, well, I'm gonna put in Infernal Affairs, and I was like, okay, can you give me sort of an idea of what kind of movie it is? And she was like, oh yeah, it's kind of a crime drama with a lot of like um psychology and Buddhist themes and stuff. I was like, okay, sounds great to me, and just um, kind of really didn't have any idea of what to expect going into it, and then just with watching the entire thing, I was just kind of blown away by just the performances of Tony Leung and Andy Lau in the movie. Just fantastic performances by them, and just kind of adored Kelly Chen's performance in the movie as well too. So just completely liked the movie just throughout, and it was just sort of my first go through, and yeah, just kind of took me by surprise because crime drama typically isn't a genre that I really dip into. So it was one of those things that just I was like, okay, I'll take a chance and see how this goes, and yeah, it was by far one of the most pleasant surprises I've ever had.
I love when you watch a movie and you're just pleasantly surprised by what you're watching. When we talked about Notting Hill, that's the one that I think I got the most surprise out of watching a movie and just outright enjoying it. This is an interesting film. I did like it. For those who probably aren't aware by now, if you're not, we did talk about this in the last episode when we discussed what we're watching. This movie was remade into The Departed, which is most famous now for getting Martin Scorsese his Academy Award for Best Director, finally. So that's where maybe some of you might be familiar a little bit with Infernal Affairs. But the for those who've seen The Departed, the plot is essentially the same. There's a mole in the police department in a city, and there's a mole in a crime ring. And basically, it's a cat and mouse game where each mole is trying to find each other in order to take each other, either one or the other, out to, I guess, gain supremacy on the situation. Of course, I saw The Departed first, and we're going to talk about that next week when we watch it. But in regards to this, I was very surprised by the feel of the movie. The movie, maybe I'm wrong on this, but the movie gave me a late 80s, 90s action film feel. to a certain extent because this movie with such a psychological bent to it, when it comes to the paranoia between the two characters, I was surprised that they didn't like hinge on that more in the movie, but they were concentrated more on, I would say, interesting camera techniques. A lot of music. I was surprised that the music was as melodramatic as it was, and just basically how much this movie runs at a nice clip of about 100 minutes, which is different from The Departed, which is about a 2 hour and 45-minute movie. So I was really surprised that this film. I was surprised and a little disappointed that the film didn't go more into the paranoia and the stakes that each character was in. They go into it a bit, but more on the surface level, I felt, than I was really expecting. So I'll be honest, the way that this film was done, I would have more expected this to be a Hollywood film than it would have been something from like Hong Kong or from Asia. That's because usually Asian cinema is a little more contemplative, a little more slow, a little more thoughtful, and I didn't get that vibe from this movie at all. Unless I've missed something completely, which is possible. That is certainly possible. But I did like the film, but I just wish it was a lot deeper than it was, because this was made out to be a pure crime caper to me with a little bit of psychology on the side than something along the lines of something that is half crime caper, half psychological thriller. So that's my feeling. I like the film, but I was a little surprised with the direction it took when it came to the film.
I know for me, just it was really, really, really just a lot of fun seeing sort of the theme of endless hell in Buddhist folklore just being a central theme in this movie.
Mhm.
It's just one of those things that just I really didn't expect. And for anyone who wants a little bit of background on me, just I'm a casual secular Buddhist, so I mean I pay attention to the scripture, but I'm not the most I guess you could say a most adherent to it.
Yeah.
So for me, just it was one of those things. I was just like, "Whoa, holy shit!" We've got some Buddhist themes in here. Holy shit! So it was a real surprise to see that being just a central theme to the movie, and while it is sort of a crime drama sort of thing, I really was surprised by the psychological piece, especially with just both characters having sort of mental breakdowns with regards to their personalities and everything.
Yeah, they do. That does happen. I just am a little disappointed with how they didn't go more into detail about it, like make you feel like you're in the shit with either one of these characters. And I think that just mainly is due to the direction that the movie took. That instead of going the psychological thriller route, they went the action crime caper route. Let me ask you a question. You mentioned the Buddhist themes in the movie. Can you go into detail exactly where they use the Buddhist themes, except for the quote in the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie where they talk about being in a continuous hell? Is there other themes that maybe someone like me who doesn't know much about Buddhism that maybe they missed?
So the term for endless hell in Buddhist literature is called Avici, Avici, and essentially in Buddhist scripture, it's basically noted that in infinite hell, you basically continually suffer. The suffering that you are subjected to can either be physical, material, or something immaterial, like something mental, emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And this level of hell is basically reserved for some of the worst sinners in Buddhist culture. So, um, if you do something like commit murder and rape and things like that, then you're probably going to be sent to this particular realm in hell, Buddhist hell, that is, and pretty much just your punishment will be whatever is the thing that tormented you the most.
Right.
And where this theme comes up is really in the psychological breakdowns between both characters. Just they're both continually trying to suffer through their identities, trying to either get rid of their past or return to their past, depending
Okay.
on which character you're talking about. So essentially, just you've got these characters who are just kind of just continually suffering through the movie and everything, and things get a little bit more serious into the Buddhist themes in the third movie. Unfortunately, we're not discussing that, but
Yeah.
this is essentially the start. You could say that the movie feels like the start down to the road to infinite hell.
Okay. Okay. So basically, the Buddhist theme is essentially that quote of being a continuous hell in lieu of both of these characters suffering through their identity and trying to stick with who they really are while pretending to be something they're not. That's essentially the continuous hell of both characters. Am I getting that correctly?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. I was just thinking that maybe there were there was other themes around surrounding the film. I know that there's one scene in the beginning that is in a Buddhist temple, but other than that, I just didn't notice if there were any other, I guess, themes involving with that as well. But that's interesting. Performances, yeah, Tony Leung is very good in this. I think I've already mentioned this in the recording, but it took me a few minutes to realize that it was Tony Leung who is playing Jan in this. Jan is the cop pretending to be a criminal, and Andy Lau played. Oh no! Oh
Well,
no!
no, you got it. Tony Leung plays Chan Wing Yan,
Yes,
who is the cop that is undercover in Han Sam's gang, and then you have Andy Lau who plays Lau Ming, and he's the triad member who is deeply embedded in the Hong Kong police force,
right,
and he's the mole that reports back to
right.
Han Sam.
These are very good. These are pretty good performances. I think Leung is a lot better in this. I think he's actually much more engaging, and I think he has the better role in this because he is allowed in his character to express more emotion than, let's say, Lau's character can, or Andy Lau's character can do. But also Andy Lau's character is, I think, much more of a colder person, which is another thing that's interesting. That's a juxtaposition when it comes to the film, where the heartless and cold one is the one that's protecting people, while the one that is technically the bad guy is the more emotional and probably more moral person in the film. So that's another interesting juxtaposition as well.
Yeah, and to your point about Andy Lau's performance as being a real cold and calculated person,
Yeah,
it's such a good role for him because a lot of the roles that he's played in a lot of movies in Hong Kong cinema, he plays a very cold and calculating sort of archetype. So it is just a 100% bang on perfect fit for him.
does he usually do like more cold or reserved roles, or is this is this a typecast for him? Like this is something that's different.
No, this is just like a role that exactly fits him because
Okay,
it just that's the kind of character he plays. Just someone who's very cold, calculated, very methodical about things. It doesn't matter if he's depicting like a good guy or a bad guy. Just that's sort of the archetype he has. He's just very very cold and calculating. And yeah, just this was my first exposure to him as far as Hong Kong cinema goes, and it was just one of those things. It was just like, wow, just this guy's just a really really cold and calculated person. Just wow, Jesus. And then, of course, as I would go on to watch more and more movies throughout my years and everything, I would see more stuff with him in it, and just that's always the archetype that he gets sort of cast into, and just he just nails that sort of archetype depiction.
Yeah. So, is the performance you prefer Leung or Lau in this? Do you prefer one or the other?
Me, I absolutely loved Tony Leung's performance,
Me
mostly
too.
because just the breakdown he has of just uh, this whole living the lie of being a gangster and having to just completely completely forget that he's a cop just so he doesn't blow his cover, and just how it's tearing him apart. You can just sort of feel it in just how he speaks, but also just um, the makeup and costume designers just kind of nailed the disheveledness of just how he feels, and it's just a whole package. And especially like in the beginning where he's just like, I'm sick of this. I want freaking out. Just let me get out of this. I'm tired of this, and just and then of course his boss, Superintendent Wong Chi Sing, he's just like, oh, it's okay, it's just one more gig, it's just one more gig, and
Yeah.
of course he just kind of fires back. He's like, no, just I'm sick and tired of this. This is freaking killing me. Just I want out, and just when you hear the articulation and of him saying it in Cantonese, you're just like, God, this dude just sounds literally miserable.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And you feel it in the performance, even though you don't understand, especially me, that when you don't understand the actual the language that's being talked about, you definitely feel that desperation and that feeling of I just want fucking out. Just get me out of this now. So yeah, I'm surprised that the other performances in the film aren't as good though. I I was actually a little disappointed with who played the mafia boss in the movie. I was expecting, I think, a little more of a showy role, or maybe something that has a little more depth to it. Since these are, this is somebody that one of the main characters is willing to risk his life for. I would like to understand why, and you just kind of don't. You don't really. I don't. When I watched it, I didn't really feel like I understood why this character, who is clearly smart and capable, would want to follow this guy to do all these things that in the end will essentially get him screwed if he gets caught. So I don't I didn't feel that connection. I also didn't feel the connection with the inspector in the movie, the main inspector in the movie that the criminal is trying to connect with and is risking his life for. Like usually in these films, you want like a father figure for that character that will want him to go through all this stuff and make it seem plausible as to why he's doing it. And neither character did that for me. Maybe I'm thinking too deeply in this film, and that wasn't the intent. And that is certainly a possibility, which is why I think this looks to be more of an action film, crime film first, than a psychological drama first. So there's that. But I don't. Yeah, I don't. I'm kind of disappointed with the performances and the characterization of those specific characters specifically, because they were so important to the main characters. I was kind of expecting more out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I can understand that too. For me, a lot of the characters, unfortunately, their stories get shuffled into some of the other Infernal Affairs movies,
Hmm.
like Hon Sam. Hon Sam, his story becomes more apparent in the second movie, unfortunately, and it kind of explains more of his motivations and sort of his origin story, and how it sort of leads into his role in the first Infernal Affairs as being one of the top cocaine dealers in Hong Kong.
Okay. Oh, so that's explained more in other films, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, all
I
right.
know. One of the performances that I did quite enjoy was Kelly Chen as Dr. Lee Sum-yi.
Okay.
Mostly because just as Dr. Lee, just she tries her best to get Chan Wing Yan to open up. She's just like, "Hey, I'm here trying to help you. I know that your boss is sending you to me because um, because if you finish uh, your therapy with me, then I'll sign a paper off so you don't get to go in jail. And for those who need a refresher, um, Chan uh, is the undercover cop in the triad.
Okay.
So of course, it's kind of more of a threat of the superintendent sending his ass to prison if he doesn't just sit through this therapy and everything, especially to kind of legitimize his cover and everything, because of course he's very prone to violent outbursts and things like that.
Hmm.
So of course, just it kind of starts off with Chan and Dr. Lee sort of kind of at odds at each other because she's just like she gives him the usual boilerplate. Hey, you're here um, because the police have ordered you for psychological therapy. If you complete it, I'll sign your paper off, and basically you won't get to go to prison. And of course, in the initial meeting, he's just kind of pissed off about this. He's like, oh fuck this, and just
Hmm.
kind of walks out the office. And then you kind of see that that both he and her sort of kind of form like um, a little bit of a relationship, and it's definitely a lot of push and pull because it's just like she'll try to get him to respond to hypnotherapy, and he'll pull shenanigans like he'll just start munching on like a giant rice cracker and be like, "What? I'm fucking hungry."
Yeah.
And so just you can and it's kind of funny because she's just exasperated by this,
Yeah.
and she's just like, "Oh my god, just quit fucking around with your therapy, dude. I'm literally trying to help you."
Yeah.
And he's just like, "I know, but just um uh, I'm not one who can be tamed and everything." And
Hmm.
then finally you get to a point where just he pulls one prank that's just a little too far. She gets pissed and she's just like, "I am so frustrated with you." And then in her frustration, she ends up tripping and falling over herself. And and um, Chan finally feels bad. He's just like, "Oh God." So he kind of helps her out, and he ends up kind of coming out clean with her. He's just like, "I have a secret that I need you to keep, but just here's my secret, and I'm going to make a very sensitive omission of all the places just in Hong Kong. I could never fall asleep anywhere. Your office is the most relaxing place that I can fall asleep in."
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where just the relationship sort of opens up.
Okay. I was gonna stop you and go into spoilers, but I'm gonna I let it slide for one reason only. All
Mm-hmm.
that you just told me about never happened in the cut I watched.
Holy shit!
You were telling me about the prank. You were telling me about all this stuff, and literally none of it's in there.
Holy shit!
None of it. Because you tell me about her performance, and I'm like, she's barely in the movie. Like I'm sitting, like she's in 3 scenes in the movie, and that's it. And they're not that memorable. So when you're telling me these scenes, like I watched this yesterday, and I don't remember these scenes at all. And either I got into a fog during those scenes, or they're not in there at all. Like they're cut, essentially. So why don't we? I think right now we should get into spoilers. You want
Okay.
to do that? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, if you're still listening, and you should be. Thank you. We're gonna go into spoilers for Infernal Affairs. If you want to come back, if you want to stop and come back when you watch the movie, go right ahead. We're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, so you mentioning that character, the doctor in this, really puzzled me when you told me you really liked her performance. Not that it was bad, but because of the cut that I watched, she's barely in it. She barely does anything, and she's pretty much. They allude to a romanticism between the two, but because of, I guess, how the movie was cut, it just was really unearned. Like, it kind of came out of nowhere that he was suddenly romantically interested in this woman. So when I saw that, I was like, that's contrived. Like, that doesn't work. Like, come on. Because it went from, here, I'll tell you exactly where it went from. It went from the first scene with him in her office being the one where he's asleep, and she's playing computer games, to then him saying that he is a criminal, he's a cop, and admitting that he's got a problem, to then the funeral scene, and that's it.
Wow, that's a humongous cut because
Yeah.
yeah, so you've got all the pranks and everything, and then you have the scene where in the um, in the edit that I was watching where just um, he pulls a final prank, pisses her off. She tries to get up and kind of like huff and puff and
Mm-hmm.
trips over herself, and then he ends up feeling sorry and helps her up, and then he finally makes the admission. He's just like, yeah, this your office is the place that I feel the most comfortable in. And then there's another scene, and it's funny because it starts off and you're just like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? And you see like him and her sort of making out and everything,
Yep.
and then sort of just you hear like an old timey alarm clock go off, and it's kind of alluded to. It isn't like just dead obviously announced, but it's kind of alluded to that whole makeout scene was just a figment of his imagination while he was asleep.
Oh, yeah.
And then you see her playing on the computer, playing Tetris or whatever.
Yeah. All that you mentioned never happened in my
What the?
never
That is
happened.
so strange.
Yeah, like you mentioning all this stuff, I'm like, that didn't happen in this movie, or the cut I saw. Yeah, like that character was, I guess it was purely de-emphasized. Like,
Yeah.
the fact and in the end where there was a text crawl in the end where basically they say that she helped open an investigation on him to get his files back so he can be honored as a cop. That is literally, like, that's it. That's all it is. It was the one scene where he's in the office sleeping and she's playing the computer game, to he tells her that he's a cop, to then he's dead and she's at the funeral, and that's it. That's her arc. That is completely it.
Well, that
And
is.
and it really feels contrived from that cut, because the only thing that you recognize in the film about her feelings toward that character is annoyance. Like, she's annoyed that he is not taking this seriously, that he is kind of using you for sleep, and just kind of like she obviously feels bad, but I thought it was more like a professional kind of, this is just the type of people that I have to deal with sometimes, and I'm an empathetic person, so yeah, I do feel bad for you. But not in a way of there's a relationship, there's a romance, there's things like that is not in this cut at all.
Wow.
The
And yeah,
dream
just
sequence is not in there at all.
and it's kind of funny because after that scene, when Chan decides to go forward with his plan to expose Lao Ming.
Mhm.
He goes to her office and he's just like, I he tells her again, and don't forget my secret. I'm a cop. And then and then sort of uh, tells her something to kind of reassure her that everything's going to be okay. He kind of tells her, or don't worry about everything. Everything will be okay by tomorrow.
Hmm.
And then after that, after he says that, he just kind of ends up kind of hugging her and and just the the way how it feels it is that they finally sort of come to realize that they both quite like each other, and that's sort of the unfortunate start of the relationship, and then you get to the just oh so great the rooftop confrontation scene.
Yes. Okay. Um, I keep saying this, but almost everything that you're telling me about the relationship between the doctor and the criminal, not there. So, that makes me also wonder, the music in the movie, is it melodramatic, bombastic, kind of, emphasizes on, I would say, on emotions, or is it more subdued?
The music will definitely stick out in some of the pivotal scenes.
Okay.
Like the one scene where the main theme of the movie plays is when um, Wing Yan's superintendent is killed by the triads by them throwing him off the building
Yeah.
and him landing right on the car.
Yeah.
Just things slow down, and then you hear just the movie theme play, and just at that point, that's when the gangland shootout starts
Okay.
between the triads and the cops.
Okay. So
So
that might be that's probably the same cut then. So they just really cut the psychiatrist part. Huh.
yeah,
Interesting.
that's a shame because it's in my opinion, it's probably one of the more funnier scenes because it sort of breaks up the tension and everything.
Hmm. Okay.
Especially because just leading up to the psychiatry office scene, just everything is so tense. Just this is right before that scene starts is pretty much just the height of the cat and mouse race for the triads to find out who the rat is in their gang, and then for the cops to try to find out who the mole is in the police force and everything.
Yeah. God, this is interesting. Like, when we talked about watching this, we looked on the internet to see if there were differences between cuts, and we couldn't really find anything other than that the Chinese cut has a throwaway line about the officer and the fake officer being arrested because he's a bad man. That was the only thing we could find. I'm wow. I'm actually I'm shocked by this. Like, I didn't. Huh. Well, now I feel kind of bad because now I feel like I'm watching an inferior cut of the film, and I'm not gonna be able to really give it a fair shake. But anyway, that won't stop me. Uh, uh, what are my thoughts? Yeah, like I said,
Overall, the psychological themes will really hit home by the third movie because that's where that's where you just see um, the concept of infinite hell sort of really open up.
yeah. Okay. All right. The main story, which is between Lao and Yan, I think is solid. It's a very good story. Like I like the cat and mouse aspect of everything, and that play, the action that goes in between those two characters, I think is the best part of the film. It yeah, it's just it's actually very entertaining. I just like I said in the review, I just wish they got into more depth with it. I like there's a movie called Munich that Steven Spielberg did in the late 2000s, I believe. I might be wrong on that, but that movie perfectly encapsulated fear and paranoia to a grave extent. Now, these are wildly different films, I will admit that, but the way that I think the way they had to have done it was to give the film more time to breathe in order to really soak in the paranoia and everything in the film. so maybe that wasn't gonna. We weren't gonna able to do that in 100 minutes, but I I sat there liking the film, but still being a little unsatisfied with that they didn't go into the themes more into the movie. I guess that's also kind of a good thing to give the film too, that you wanted more of it when you when I watched it. Like, I was satisfied, but I definitely wanted a lot more than it gave. So yeah, maybe that will essentially lead me to watching the other two films when and if they come stateside. So yeah, that's I guess that's my take on that.
Yeah. This is still one film that I still love coming back to every once in a while. Unfortunately for me, there's a bit of a curse when I do that because when I see Infernal Affairs 1, I just end up having to go, ah, damn it, I need to see 2 and 3 now. Ah, damn
Oh
it.
yeah,
And that's exactly what happened when I was rewatching this film to prepare for this movie club discussion. Because I finished the first one, I was like, oh man, that was good. Damn it, I need to go watch 2 now.
which do you think are the best ones? Which is the best one of the three?
As far as best to worst, one in my opinion is the best.
Okay.
3 is second place, and then 2 is sort of last place for me.
Huh. Okay.
But I think mostly just because I kind of enjoy the psychological theme that Infernal Affairs has as a whole.
Yeah.
And there was less psychological themes in the second movie compared to the first movie, and then the third movie is sort of more of a conclusion of the whole psychological aspect of the entire trilogy.
Yeah. I was surprised that Lau got away with it, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean it's explained a little bit more in detail by the third movie, but
mhm.
yeah, just it's a bit kind of insidious and clever.
But I guess with the theme of the movie, it makes sense because if, let's say, if Jan got away, was able to get away, he wouldn't be in that perpetual hell. He would actually be saved and be good. But since the theme of the film, as you stated, is continuous hell, then it makes sense that he actually survives, and he'll have to pretend to be this person for the rest of his fucking life. Essentially, is what's going to end up happening. So I guess to an extent that makes sense. But I was surprised. It didn't disappoint me or anything. But I was just kind of surprised that in that movie, just basically, I would say the villain gets away with everything. I got another question for you. The
Okay.
the ex girlfriend or the friend of Jan that pops up with her daughter.
Yeah.
There was one scene in the film where they're introduced, where he's introduced to their daughter and he's nice to her and this and that. And then the final scene, and then the next thing you see her in is the funeral, like for some reason crying, which gave no context at all that they were close in any way, shape, or form. Was there stuff cut from that too?
Um, it's kind of more sort of an inference. So for anyone who's still keeping up with us on this discussion, so there's a scene where Ton basically tells Crazy Kung, he's just like, hey man, don't snitch on me to the boss. I'm gonna go out and get myself a massage. And
Yeah.
so he ends up stepping out, and he bumps into this woman and her daughter and everything, and turns out that it's his ex-girlfriend from many years ago.
Okay.
And pretty much just they kind of talk, they kind of make some small talk and everything, and then she kind of makes a mention of, hey, well, I gotta go, I gotta meet my husband and everything. And then just he's just like, oh, okay, well, it was good seeing you. And then he kind of walks away, and then of course the daughter goes, Mom, who's that? And she kind of says, oh, well, he's a close friend. um Unfortunately, her story is explained a little bit more in the second movie.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then
Jesus.
and then of course, she does appear at Chan's funeral, where he's given a police officer's burial with full honors and everything.
Yeah.
And she cries, and and at least in the Hong Kong version, the daughter notices her mom crying, and she's like, "Mommy, why are you crying?" And then she doesn't really say. And
No.
um, it's from those two scenes, it's sort of inferred that the little girl is actually Chan's daughter, but
Okay.
there's a little bit more of a deeper explanation in the second movie.
So was this supposed to be always a trilogy of films, or was this one of those things where the movie was popular and yeah, they decided to do a sequel to the first one?
At least from the stories that I've heard on how this movie's development went, um, this was originally just supposed to be a one-off,
Hmm.
and more so from the fact that just when they were trying to find funding for the movie, no one wanted to touch it because it was just like, dude, you're talking about triad business? Whoa, that's a no-go. That is no, 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 no. That
Yeah.
is scary shit. You're not glorifying the triads. You're making them to be as brutal and as ruthless as they really are. That's not a good look. We really don't want to get involved into this,
Hmm.
and that's why it was just so hard to find funding. But finally, they found the executive over at Media Asia, and he was just like, I love the idea. I love it. It's just raw. It's gritty. Just yeah, I'm gonna greenlight this, and I'm gonna give you the funding for it. And then when it ended up being a bit of a hit in the domestic Hong Kong market, just they ended up getting funding to sort of continue on with it.
Hmm. Okay. This isn't a really raw, gritty film, though. This is.
Well, it is for Hong Kong cinema,
Okay.
especially the fact that the triads are depicted a little bit more closer to life.
Okay.
Because for sort of a counterexample for a movie that sort of glorifies the idea that triads are all about brotherhood, camaraderie, and stuff. There's a series of movies in Hong Kong called Young and Dangerous, and it's all just about the romanticization of the triad. So
Hmm.
just bros being bros, supporting each other when things go bad, um, beating up gang members who beat up the bros in the gang, just all sorts of glorification of just like the bonds that brotherhood brings together and everything.
Hmm.
So a lot of Hong Kong movies that featured the triads really sort of played them up in sort of a romantic way, kind of like how things were in the Japanese movie scene with the Yakuza. A lot of films glorified the Yakuza as sort of like paragons of brotherly virtue and stuff like that, when in all honesty they're not. So
Yeah.
same sort of thing in the Hong Kong movie scene, but for this movie to completely go, no, we want to go show how it's really like in the triad. Just it was really raw and gritty for Hong Kong audiences.
Okay.
I will say, this is something that we had discussed before we had started the podcast.
Hmm.
Janus Films apparently has the rights to
Oh,
um,
baby.
Infernal Affairs.
Hmm.
So this may mean that this movie might be coming out to theaters in the U.S. and everything.
Oh, it definitely is. It's coming to
Okay.
art house theaters and the theaters. They haven't gotten a date as of yet, but yeah, it's getting a 4K transfer, and they're releasing it in theaters. There's not a date as of right now.
Yeah. So if you decided to stick through the spoilers and everything, and you still want to watch it, I would still say definitely do watch it when it starts making its way to art houses and everything. Um, and I say this with respect to the fact that just unfortunately the movie, if you're trying to get the movie on Blu-ray, it is crazy expensive because it's now out of print and it hasn't been reprinted since ever. Um, I know for me, I was trying to look for a nice Blu-ray box set because I have the VCDs and I also have the DVDs, and even the Blu-ray box set, which is now out of print. The average price for that thing is $130. which is a
Jesus.
lot of money for just a trilogy of Blu-rays.
Yeah. If you want to see it, the only way to see it right now is through Apple and iTunes. You can rent it for $4. All right. Final thoughts of the film. I of course saw The Departed first, so I have that knowledge from that movie coming into this. So when I came to watch this film, I was surprised by the tone and I guess how melodramatic it is. But it's a good time. It's a good movie. Fun. I would venture to say fun in a certain aspect, but it's definitely a engaging, interesting film to watch. Good performances, especially from Tony Leung and Andy Lau. I'm now jealous that I didn't get the right cut, so now I'm probably going to have to go on your server to download that. Great.
Yeah.
But yeah, from what I saw, if you're going to download the version from iTunes, it is a good movie. And I'd recommend it. I think you should watch it if you're interested.
Yeah. I will say it's a good movie, but I will go a little bit further and say if you can find the Hong Kong version of the movie, definitely try to make the effort to find it. Um, the mainland Chinese movie is a little bit of a disappointment, mostly because of the um, anti-glorification of crime law that the mainland Chinese have. So you won't get the true ending there. But here's the irony about that. Apparently, for the third movie, when it came out to mainland China, they actually referenced the true ending, ironically.
That didn't work out well. Huh.
Yeah, kind of a continuity break, but yeah, I would say this is definitely one of my favorite movies, mostly just from sort of the psychological aspect um, of the entire story. And it's a little bit more fun and apparent in the Hong Kong edition of the film. So, yeah, that would be my thoughts on it.
Okay. All right. All right, Zero. So we are closing in at the end of this podcast. But before we go, I have a question for you.
All right.
So we are talking about Infernal Affairs, which was then remade into The Departed, which, spoiler alert, we're going to be watching next week. So, yeah. Anyway, with that, the question I have for you is this. And you can use any media property on this, but I'm going to emphasize movies for myself. What movie would you like to see remade in a different setting or language?
Tough one.
Oh, yeah? Do you have like a favorite English language film that you maybe would like to see remade in, like, say, Hong Kong or Japan? Or is there a Japanese film that you would like to see someone get a crack at and possibly remake into a feature film here?
There are a few that come to mind,
Okay.
but I think one of the ones that is kind of more silly and fun that I would love to see a Western director kind of take a crack at and try to be respectful to sort of the silly and fun aspect of the movie. Um, it's called The Duel, and it was released in I want to say around 2000. Yeah, around 2000. Stars Andy Lau and Ekin Chang.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on a Chinese legend about two legendary swordsmen. I would love to see that sort of transposed into sort of like a maybe a like a mythical gunslinger movie. I mean, it could be placed in like a futuristic shadow punk like setting where just you've got magical powers and firearms and stuff like that. So that would be one thing that they could that would be one direction they could take it or something. But yeah, just it's it's both very serious but also very fun too. And every once in a while there's some kind of dorky slapstick moments as well too. Just really interesting in Hong Kong Chinese movie. But yeah, it would be one hell of a challenge to sort of keep that essential vibe and feel if a Western director were to kind of remix it or something.
I may have to shock you here, but I think it was remade into a film here. I'm just making sure that this is correct. Hold on. I'll delete this if I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Okay, never mind. Never mind. I'm wrong. Okay, because there is a movie called The Duel. It was done in 2016, but I do not think it's a remake of this.
Yeah, and I mean, even if there was a Western remake of it, it wouldn't necessarily have to be named The Duel. It could be named whatever.
Wow,
But
there's a
yeah,
lot of movies named The Duel, so this is a
yeah,
yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to look it up right now. Okay, interesting. Okay, my choice is an old Hitchcock film. It's actually one of my favorite Hitchcock films. It's called Rebecca, and it's about a young woman who ends up marrying a widower who gets basically haunted by I guess her the head maid in his house to a certain extent. It's kind of a scary gothic horror film. I would like to see a Japanese director do a Japanese spiritual twist to that. I'm not exactly sure if Japanese filmmakers have any reverence to Hitchcock. I know they have reverence to Ozu and Kurosawa. I know that for a fact. But I think if maybe even a Korean director would give that a shot, and I would like to see what they come up with that at least. The thing about remakes, Zero, that I've always felt with is I would hate to see my all-time favorite movies remade. So, like, I think we talked about, and we cut this from the episode. We talked about when we watched Casablanca, how many times they tried to remake that and redo it and revision it for a new generation, and just how awful that would sound. It would be kind of hard to find a film that you genuinely really, really like and would really be comfortable with someone to actually, redo it, I guess. It would. I would venture to even say I would rather see a more flawed film, I guess, that I kind of like get a remake. You know what I mean?
yeah. I would say that if a Japanese director were to remake your movie of choice, um, there would have to be one thing to happen, especially with regards to the movie being a Hitchcock movie.
Okay.
I would say that they would have to consult Japanese horror manga author Junji Ito
Oh
because
no!
yeah, just
Oh, I can't
that.
watch that film then. Oh, go ahead and
um,
explain who Junji Ito is.
he is a longtime horror author who's written just a lot of really classical horror mangas. Um, One of the more famous ones that he's known for is Tomie, but he's also written stuff like um, Uzumaki or Spiral, if you need a translation for that. The Museum of Terror, uh, Voices in the Dark, and just a few other novels that are pretty much classics and everything.
Hmm.
So, um, but yeah, just thankfully he's not all sort of blood and guts sort of horror.
Ah, okay.
He I think it's more just he understands sort of the psychology of horror, and I think just consulting with him to sort of make a Japanese take on a Hitchcock film would just be so good.
God, when you mention him in horror, I'm like, there's no effing way I'm gonna watch that movie because I've seen some of his drawings and they are messed up. Holy crap!
Yeah, and
Ugh.
coincidentally, he's also done some lighter fare too. Like he actually made a manga series called Junji Ito's Cat Diary, and it's about like it's a little bit of a slice of life sort of thing
Hmm.
that basically just talks about like the life he has with his two cats and everything.
Okay.
So yeah, he's quite flexible. So. Um, So it's not that he's just all about blood and guts and stuff like that. He's got quite a wide breadth.
Fair, fair. There's a director that I feel is a really good director called David Cronenberg. And I haven't seen the films he's most famous for because I can't handle blood and guts. But I've seen some of the films that don't have that stuff, and they're fantastic. But everyone that I know that are really into films keeps telling me you have to watch Videodrome. And there ain't no fucking way I'm watching Videodrome. So, yeah, that sucks. But yeah, right. Like, I think some people, like, I'll be honest with you. I balk when anybody from the United States says, I'm going to remake this classic movie. And I automatically, instinctively say, fuck no, do not do that. Because what ends up happening is that they basically either just remake the film shot for shot with maybe some minor tweaks, or they do the film again, but for a new generation where it just doesn't fit and it doesn't really play well, or they have to change so much of the film that it just isn't the same film anymore. So, yeah, like, but on the other hand, there have been plenty of Shakespearean plays that have been remade into decent films. 10 Things I Hate About You. I think it's an okay film for what it is, but that's a remake of a Shakespearean play. So, yeah, like, it's certainly possible to do that. But for the most part, when I hear, like, hey, this American director is going to remake X film, oh, shit. Oh, no. So, but, yeah. Right. So that's... I think that would be cool, actually. I would like to see other countries take, I think, our best films and do something different with it. That's what I would be interested in, personally. So, yeah. All right, Zero. Well, we are at the end of this episode yet again. We already know what we're talking about next week. We're going to talk about Martin Scorsese's remake of Infernal Affairs, The Departed, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, and Jack Nicholson. Of course, tune in next week for when we discuss The Departed. For that, I am The Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
And we will talk to you all next week.